So, g'day, Keri. You're in Durban.
I
That's
am.
a long way from the UK. So, how's it feeling? Like, what's it mean to you?
Yeah, well, I'm getting closer on the longitude, so it feels quite close to the UK. I'm only 2 hours out from it now, so that's a sign of progress going around the world. Durban's been fantastic. The welcome we received on arrival was superb. I think the lightning display outclassed any firework display I've ever seen, but it was a little bit on the scary side, so I think they overdid that part of it. But otherwise, it's been great.
Yeah, it looked amazing, that photo that someone took. I don't know whose it was, but anyway, it was a good
Yeah,
one.
I thought I credited the right person, but actually it was a professional photographer who shared those photos anyway. But it was I've seen a more intense electrical storm off Sierra Leone when we were anchored once in a warship. But you just feel so vulnerable in the mini globe race, and ridiculous measures like putting a cable off the chain plate in case it gets struck. It's my one. It still is. I mean, I don't really have phobias, but when I'm at sea, lightning, anything else, you strike a container, a whale, or you get knocked down, you've dismasted. You can sort of rationalize and plan and work through how you're going to respond. So you have a game plan. With a lightning strike, to my mind, you just don't know what the consequences will be. Will you have a rig?
Yeah.
Will you have a boat? Will you be hit? So yeah, it's very tense. And when I was sailing up the coast to finish, I was only 5 hours from the finish when the wind dropped off, and that was it. It was a long struggle to get back, but I had to keep tacking inshore to try and get out of the advancing front with the worst of the lightning because I just didn't want to get struck by it.
Yeah. My worst was Gulf Stream, lightning around. You don't know how far away it is. And for about 20 seconds, some of the standing rigging started to glow purple, like a neon purple. And I'm thinking,
Whoa.
holy dooly. Anyway, so
I say if you had any hair, your hair would have probably stood on end as
that's where
well.
it happened. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, that's cool. Yeah, very interesting indeed. Anyway, you got there. So this leg was nothing like any of the others from Mauritius to here. If I was a sailor, as much as it's horrible, it's quite challenging, quite fun. How do you take that?
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. I knew it would be. I mean, my view on trade wind sailing. It's great for cruisers, but it's not really the field of combat for sailing for racing sailors. All this nonsense of running downwind with two spinnakers and stuff. I like to keep my main up, and I was so
Yeah,
excited coming into Durban when it was okay. The wind had dropped, but when it filled in, it was grey skies, grey seas. In fact, the sea was black. And yeah, it felt like being back in the UK on a normal weekend outing, and sailing upwind on a beach. So I knew this was going to be fun. I didn't get off to the best start ever. A number of reasons, and it's quite interesting. One was in the back of my mind was something Graham Cox said. He said, "Don't get south of Durban, you'll never get back." So always thinking in my mind, there's a sort of buffer zone. I'm not going to take a southerly latitude in any way. And the other one is just before we left, Eric sidled up to me as he does sometimes. He said, "Hey, Kerry, we're all talking about it. What because we know you always do something slightly different. What's your strategy?" And actually, I was in the process of just getting underway and doing stuff. So he said, "Oh, but because we're all going south." So I set off, and I knew there was a slight problem with the electrics, and I noticed the panel had been damaged when we were alongside, also at the customs key. Even though I swung them inboard, it had stressed the cables on one of them because they'd corroded through it and transpired. So for the first 3 days, I didn't have enough electricity to sort of flash up starlight. I was trying to get my batteries up to a safe level before we had any bad weather, in case I had to sort of I had to rely on longer range communications and stuff. And yeah, so I carried on south, and that was quite useful because on Port Jai, I could still use my one remaining solar panel, the starboard one, get the much insulation throughout the day and try and get as much voltage and power back into the battery. And anyway, about 3 days in, so it wasn't really my strategy. I wanted to go straight across to Madagascar, even going north of the wind shadow of La Reunion and get into that current. Darling, to realise that everybody had already shot off and I was in last place. So I really enjoyed that. It's like, okay, well, I'll pick my way back up through the fleet. And I was just 40 miles behind Renault, so 5 hours at the time. So I was doing 8 knots as he came in. So I think I made a reasonable comeback. And it was
yeah.
all through working both the weather systems, pushing the boat fairly hard, and yeah, an element of luck, of course, so it's ever in sailing. But yeah, I just sort of have the bit between my teeth. Whereas in recent legs, I think I expressed to you when I got very disillusioned with the motor sailing brigade in light winds, and some still the legacy of what I regard as the twin rudder configuration. I'd sort of lost a little bit of the heart of racing. So this is more It's less mini globe inspired. It's a great place to sail. And the fear early on that in early forecasts on the 6th of November, just as we were approaching Durban, we were going to get hit by a southerly buster
Yeah.
that would have had us in tears because it was due to last for a few days. And by then you're close to the coast and you'd either get in and you're lucky or you just got
Yeah.
absolutely hammered. So that also made me think I better get a wriggle on and get there as soon as I can, and then
Yeah.
have options. And as you know,
Yeah.
it's always about having options at sea.
I know. And then now the thing that surprised me because I've never done that leg, but now that I'm watching the weather along the coast there so intensely over the last month or so, it's just so unstable. There are so many factors coming in. You can have this hard and fast forecast that you think is going to hold. 24 hours later, completely upside down. Not even
Yeah,
just a little change. It's just
yeah,
unbelievable. So, yeah, quite
yeah.
challenging. Yeah.
I don't know if you
Okay.
track Mozambique Channel. I'd closed to Renault and Dan, obviously, who's always just following Renault, so closed them right down. But they went south to stay in the jar as it went south. And there was a forecast for a while which showed a favourable wind angle and pressure to get into towards Richards Bay and then pick up the Aguilas current quicker coming down the
Yeah.
coast. So I said in 4 6 hours, the forecast had changed completely. Where they were heading down to a big hole in the wind, I then ended up with quite light winds where it was no longer viable for Richards Bay because I was sailing too far for the boat speed I could achieve. So I then
Yeah.
had to sort of beeline for Durban. And then that just as the angle shifted, that put you. But I felt like I was better in contention at the outset. But it was a shift in forecast,
Yeah.
shift in
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
weather, obviously, is the reality.
Yeah.
So a couple of times I've made quite short-term tactical decisions based on, say, a slight anomaly in windy, and you recognise that it is just that. The way the group files work, even on ECWMF, which has a greater granularity. If you imagine like discretized boxes of the area that it's covering, it analyzes through the sort of the analysis of spectrometry and also the weather. Is it how each little box affects the other? So it
Yeah.
can lead you down a sort of what looks like a
Absolutely.
really appealing wind shift that's local,
Probably.
and you think,
Probably.
I think it is just that. It's just an
Yeah.
anomaly.
Too much information for most people listening to this, but I know
Okay, all
exactly what
right,
you mean.
sorry.
So
Okay,
those
forgive
watching the
me.
daily updates, they'd say, yeah, you can never trust the graphic there. But anyway, all good. So how's it? How's life on board the boat? Living, sleeping,
Um,
eating.
Cramped, uncomfortable, a little bit squalid at the moment because once you're alongside and all the sails go back down below, man, you run out of space quite quickly. Um, it is what it is. We're nearly a year into it, and then she's been my home and residence and all that time. And I could do with a little bit more interior painting again and just a real clean up, which I'm doing while I'm here alongside and would continue to in Cape Town. And also thinking ahead to selling the boat is making sure I can hand her on to her next custodian in good shape and condition for the
Yeah,
Transat race.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Anything you'd change dramatically on the boat? On deck or on down below? Seeing you've travelled so far.
That's a good question. I'm about to put just some controllable downhauls on, if you like, sort of a pole, spinnaker pole downhauls. So I've got a more, I don't like the twin pole configuration, but one of the issues is I tend to do just a sail tie on to. But I think you need, as the sails are getting more tired, then you need some finesse in the control of the pole height to make sure you're matching the tension in the luff with the sort of amount of wind pressure and wave movement and impact so that you're holding the pressure in the sail because it's very easy for it to sky slightly and just lose some of the um, power that the sail's generating. So I think I need to fine tune that, and I'll do that while I'm here.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing really.
You.
Oh, and I've got new solar panels arrived from E3 Electronics in France in Arzel today, so I need to obviously put those back on and get them plugged in again.
Okay.
But I'm using the same configuration. It's just I I I didn't open up the electric junction boxes on the ones I bought, and they're Seatronic, and I thought because it would invalidate the warranty. And there's that sort of proud fitting which got a lift-off cap, and effectively once they put the electronics together, they just plug it with silicon, and that was defective on two of my panels. So some water ingress cause it to corrode. So I think the other thing I would do, even with
Oh,
new panels, is strip that cap off and make sure that it's really watertight. Because I've
yeah.
been caught out now twice on that.
Do they give you new panels?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm paying for them. The others are under warranty, but I think I need to take them back to France to sort of get the
Yeah.
money back on them
Yeah. Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah.
I need to go into my emails because they sent me their bank details and stuff. So I'm assuming they'll want some payment.
Yeah.
But I think it's whether we recover, once I take the
Yeah.
panels
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. 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 That's cool. Yeah. All good. So do you realise you're sailing home now, and you've sailed a long way? Does that do you sort of look over your shoulder every now and then? Sheepers. Do you feel? How do you feel?
Yeah. Yeah, the race seems to have just flown by. I think in advancing years, every year passes quicker than the previous.
Oh yeah.
But this year in particular, I look back on the things we've seen and the things we've done, and one becomes a little bit blasé. But when you take a stock take of it, and this definitely comes across when you're giving a presentation about the race, we've seen the vast, varied, wonderful, bountiful oceans. I'm excited to be going back into my home ocean, the Atlantic, and I know that route up via Namibia and across to Saint Helena and Brazil. I've sailed that before, and it's a beautiful. That time of year, it's a beautiful route to sail. So that I'm looking forward to. But with an approaching apprehension about the end of the race, because all good things come to an end. And so it is a mixed feeling. And Jakob actually was the first to voice that in one of his interviews with you, I think, or the
Yeah.
reports he did. He said, follow when I get home, and there's some truth in that. So, and they, so with some, I'm psyched, and also I'm looking at whether I'd ship the boat back. And obviously, with the death of my mother, circumstances have changed quite a lot. Because I really wanted, for her benefit and my father's, I wanted to sort of sail the boat back into Salcombe across the bar and take them both for a sail because they've been keen followers of the race.
Yeah.
Obviously, half of that aspect is no longer there. The boat will need to be handed on to a new owner. But I sort of had planned to just sail back, and that actually that time of year, straight after the prize giving on the 22nd of March, we're still into quite a tricky weather window to get
Yeah.
across
It's
the
a bit
horse
early.
latitudes.
Too early.
It's early, yeah, and you can get really beaten up. But I'm under some pressure to get back as soon as I can, really. So,
Yeah.
which is not a great recipe for success, as you know, and particularly when you're not racing and you're outside the framework of a race,
Yeah.
to sort of be pushing yourself
Oops.
suboptimal is not always the recipe for good seamanship.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. Okay, you covered off on a few things there. So, is there what's the one thing that you miss all the time on the boat, or while you're in the sailing?
Well, obviously, my girlfriend. No. but if
Yeah, as
but,
you said that
but,
the signal froze, and all we got this big cheesy grin and says girlfriend. Very good.
then we leave
Okay.
the listeners to work out what that is. But if you look at what else, what would it be? Well, I'm really struggling with making good coffee at sea. That's one thing, I suppose. But I've learned to live with that. I'm not really missing much. And we've said it many times, haven't we, Don, that actually with the advent of Starlink Mini and the ease of which we can preserve communications ashore, we still feel in touch. So it's not so much the human contact. I think I'm having enough of that. Okay. What I would say and what I really miss is proper dinghy racing and high level sailing in tight fleets in really physical racing dinghies that just
Yeah.
where you can keep fit just by virtue of sailing, and instead of what we're doing at the moment is physical but in a different way. It's not aerobically fit, so I'm sort of missing that aspect because you always think that you're on a sort of declining trajectory of competitiveness as you get older, and I don't want to sort of fall behind the fleet. I want to sort of still be where I can leading fleets in dinghy racing, so that I miss.
Yeah. 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 Who or what was inspirational to you in your life to get you where you are now? Who's your big inspiration?
I'm not a You may have observed this. I'm not a very good follower. I'd like to forge my own way, and there are many people in history I suspect. Of course, there's the influence of my parents, my father, my mother. My father was a keen sailor, but he was a what I'd call a gunk holer. He liked estuary creeks and fishing
Yeah.
and sailing and day sailing. So he was never a racer. I've got great admiration for the likes of Paul Elvstrom. I often quote, his phrase that if in winning an event you lose the respect for the competition, you haven't won the event. So the sort of gentlemen sailors. And there are some British sailors a little bit older than me who inspired me, the likes, and the dinghy races primarily, but Graham Bailey, Will Henderson, coming up through national 12 class and international 14s, and then Graham's very active in the Dragon Fleet as world champion. Will's done many great events. What I really admired in them, they were great sailors, but they're also perfect gentlemen because we all have a habit, particularly with a background in team racing and match racing, we get quite hot-headed and aggressive on the water, both with competitors and sometimes with your crew. And in them, I saw an innate calmness, a sort of,
Yeah.
yeah, cold-blooded competitiveness, but they never lost their charm and sense of decency and gentlemanly conduct. So they were a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
influence to me.
Okay.
And
So
then
if I,
in history, following the Navy, I would say, Nelson, Collingwood, all those good things, but they're for different reasons, really. And then
yeah.
Audrey Sutherland, of course, who I quote, go simple, go solo, go now, but
Yeah.
for different reasons from the kayaking side.
Okay. So now you've probably seen it already, and I mean, you've become an inspiration like other entrants in the race. How does that make you feel? You know what I mean?
I was completely unaware of that, actually, and I can't quite relate to that because it feels like what we're doing, for us, it doesn't feel that dramatic, but I can see that it enshrines a sense of adventure. And what we are able to do is provide a portal on the world where we're visiting remote places in a continuum. And by just capturing that in hopefully good photos and an expression of what we're seeing, it just gives people the realization that you can traverse the world in small craft. And if you
Yeah.
remember, when you asked what was our reason for wanting to do a mini globe race, I replied that I wanted to see how big the world is. And I'm definitely having that opportunity now. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
very humbled by other people's interest, but I don't see that as a reflection on me. I see that actually as a reflection on you and the events that you host and organize. So I
Oh,
put
we're
the
all in it
credit
together.
squarely.
We're all in it together.
Yeah,
You know.
but I put the credit squarely at your feet.
Oh well, but it's interesting because I detected a little bit there of an imposter syndrome situation, and when I did my circumnavigation, the BOC, I was exactly the same feeling where you'd walk into a yacht club and people look at, oh, that's Don McIntyre, did the thing, and I'd say, well, you feel a bit uneasy because it was hard, but it wasn't that hard. It was just one day after the other, and I always come back to that whole thing. Anyone can do it. You just got to want to do it. Just keep
Yeah.
going. So, yeah. And so I can see the same thing.
As a bit of
Yeah.
as a bit of fun yesterday, and towards the end of the presentation, I just asked who in the audience was keen to do the mini globe race, and there was one gentleman put his hand up, one of their young sailors, quite a character, and I gave him the microphone to explain why. It was all for a bit of fun, but he really rose to the challenge. And so I also say that if we're inspiring more people to sail, to start sailing, to take on
Yeah.
challenges, then that is the sort of true legacy. And as I've said to you, the partly through the engines and the rudders and all that. So my sort of interest in the sort of pushing the high level competition this race abated. It wasn't I just need to win this because the voyage as a passage in its own right stands on its own. The achievement at the end, and I think you probably said this to us at the beginning, but I wasn't listening to it as carefully as I should have done. But the sense of achievement and the wonderment and the fun and the excitement has been completing the voyage. The racing bit of it is like, well, okay, it is there, but it's almost secondary now. And that's not because I'm just in third place and disappointed. It's just that there's so much else that goes on, and when you meet more of the cruising community around the world and what they're doing and what they're achieving, I find that very humbling because when it's always a racing, it was always about who's won what event, doing what event. This is about where people have voyaged to and how far off grid what they've
Yeah.
done. So I think
Yeah.
I'm being converted into a bit of a cruiser, really.
Yeah. Well, it's part and parcel of the whole deal. So if there's, the race rules really well and all that sort of stuff, and the event, the concept, the ethos, if you had a magic wand and there was one thing you could change about the MGR, what would it be?
You asked me that at the beginning, and I've never changed my tune. I said, take out the rule that allows outboard motors for tactical reasons.
Okay, well, in your case, because we already know that, if you could change one other thing, what would it be?
Okay, one other thing. What would I change? Well, I'll tell you what, let's look at the next race, can we, Don, and say what
Yeah.
I see emerging there that maybe could create a little bit of warming. I think that we've reached a great demand for the boats. People are very keen to
Yeah.
race. I think if we put restrictions on, say, how many second-hand boats, how many new builds, that sort of ratio. I think there's merit in keeping things very open, And remember, when we considered this edition of the race, there was initially a restriction on how many boats from any particular nation could enter.
Oh yeah, yeah,
There's a limit in numbers, and I think also I would consider not even imposing a limit. I think it will naturally set itself at a sensible level, but just sort of set some of that I can see can incentivize people to apply and enter early. But that bit of it, if people are going to do the race, they're going to do the race. There's a danger if we set too many constraints that will turn some people away because they see the constraints themselves as the overwhelming obstacle to overcome. So I think it's
yeah.
about a management bit, please don't think that's a criticism. It's just an
No, 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 no,
observation
no,
on
no.
how
It's
you set it
interesting because
up.
we set limits mainly because personally I don't I'll be blown away if we get more than 20 entrants in the next race.
Yeah, yeah,
But it gives a definition to the maybe the logistics. Like you look in Lanzarote. I mean, if we had more than 20 boats, we could probably fit them, but it all gets a bit crazy. And so
yeah,
that's part of it. But yeah, it's an interesting point. And I just say to people, that anyone that says they're worried about not getting in, oh, you've only got 20 boats. I've just started to build my boat. And I said, well, look, don't worry because
yeah.
we had 35 people or more than that. We said we're going to restrict it to 30 boats, I think, and we had 45 people in as soon as we announced the race. We were all going to do the race. We're going to do the race, and
Yeah.
we ended up with 18. So anyway, but a very valid point for sure. Okay,
Oh,
so
can I just say, Don, the other thing is, I think now that we've established a reputation for the race, it's also about broader engagement early on. And I think the sort of current sailors are probably very keen to assist in this to sort of expand your team if it were
yeah, you're all
welcome.
ambassadors.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the sort of relationship with Royal Natal Yacht Club, the relationship with Grand Bay Yacht Club, now established, and I know you did a lot of work with the Royal Natal. The Grand Bay Yacht Club sort of came out at their own volition to sort of welcome us, and
yeah,
they're very keen to be partners in the ensuing races
yeah,
and
yeah,
to raise the profile. And when I showed the picture in the presentation where we were taking sailors out in Antigua, the disabled and the school children
yeah,
that we did in Fiji as well, I guess we didn't do it here because notionally this was just an 8-day stopover. But of course, it's
yeah,
a great opportunity again at each point to try and get young sailors just out in the boat and experience them.
yeah.
And it's a distraction from the race and the recovery time and work and maintenance you might need to do on the boat. But it's a very important part of our own outreach and making the race feel accessible.
Yeah, exactly. The biggest challenge we've had on this one is working out the leg times. Speeds of the
Yeah.
boats in the water. It was really vague in the beginning, so we had to. It seems unbelievable. I said 100 miles a day was it. We did our plastics planning on 100 miles a day. Shit, we're doing 120, 130 miles a day. So that opens up opportunities,
Well,
and we're
no,
learning a lot.
100,
You know, yeah.
170, 180.
I don't know. So anyway, we're on the current pre-notice of race, but you can rest assured, in April next year when it's wrapped up, there'll be some big changes. Based on everything we're seeing here and the feedback we're getting and things like that. So, and yes, it's forming the relationships on the way. Like we've been dealing with Vince for a long time, but we're not there. They don't know who we are really, what the boats are, and so on. Now everyone's a touchy-feely thing. Now it's all there. We can make some really good inroads, But so far, so good. Touch wood, So yeah. Okay. So what's the worst part about the GGR? Like what is something gripes you? Like something that you sort of think, oh shit, I got to keep going. I know you would have never thought of giving up, but is there anything?
Yeah. So I always say that I'm never ready to leave a place, but I'm always ready to leave. So the boat's always ready. I could go as she is, but there's always stuff to be done. When I get to port, I'm overwhelmed by the hospitality and friendliness and the friends you make. And naturally, I can be quite, on dit en français, bavard, or not quite garrulous, but like I quite like the company around and the opportunities. And so I end up getting quite squeezed always on preparation. I just need to be better at that. And each stopover, whilst I love being at sea, I'm always reluctant to go back to sea because I'm having such a good time. So I can't think how I could find anything I don't like. It just doesn't exist. I could say sometimes I think I've had to play a bit of a role to corral the mindset of my fellow competitors that we're sailing under a race directorship and that we should respect that and comply with that. So some of the sort of, like any family, we have our fallings out and our disagreements and stuff, and it's inevitable. And I always regret
Yeah, yeah,
that, but we all know that if anything happened to any one boat or sailor, we'd all be there to support them and help them. If anybody needs help alongside someone, but we don't always see eye to eye on certain stuff. And it's been quite an interesting revelation to me, how people interpret the framework and structure and organization of a race differently. I'll
yeah,
do what we're told to do. That's the challenge. And we all face the same
yeah,
framework. We don't want to
yeah.
massage it in any way, shape, or form to our own personal advantage. I don't think we should. So I found that a bit frustrating, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of that is because the event's so long. We're going 13 months. But I've got to say, so far, the MGR, compared to some of the other events, is a dream run.
Yeah,
But
yeah, and long may it be so.
in the context, there's lots of starts and finishes and blah, 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 interactions, boom, boom, boom. Whereas a lot of our other events, it's a bit longer. But and it goes with the territory, no one has
Yeah,
to like
yeah,
you all the time, I learnt that a long time ago.
yeah,
And there's method in our madness as well. The decisions we make have got ramifications all the way down the back that other people don't see. So we got to
yeah. No,
move
I
with
can
what
see
we've got.
that.
And
And
also
some of that is,
with the first edition of event, you've got to be very careful you don't change too much too quick, because otherwise
yeah,
you can blow the whole concept. So yes, there's going to be
yeah.
some big changes coming when this one's over. We'll announce them later, and it's all valuable. And as a first event, this is fantastic. Anyway, we're getting off track. This is meant to be about you. So okay, anything else you want to get across from your perspective before we wrap it up?
We're reaching a cusp where quite a few boats, we probably need to some people need to change sails, replace sails,
Yeah,
work on them. I was always a big fan of the 48-hour penalty, 2-day
yeah,
penalty, because it discourages sort of checkbook racing. The appeal of the mini it is an affordable round boat race. So I think the management on the ground is relatively new, really. Always degree of mistrust and suspicion creeping in when people are sort of looking at what sails are being used. Remember, I said we should just, like any sort of championship with one design, we stamp the sails and everybody, then there's no doubt. And I
yeah,
think if you can take away any of the element of doubt, like we do when we report our positions and we report the previous and
yeah.
successive, subsequent finisher or whatever. I think we do just a little bit like just sharpening up some of the rule enforcement or the mechanisms of which rule enforcement is easier to interpret from the sailors on the ground. I think that would be helpful in future.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of it's covered, but some people don't see the things we do. But anyway, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Uh,
Yeah. So,
and
I
there's
challenged
still,
you on this in Lanzarote, and you said, "Well, it's all on trust," and you're right, it is, and
yeah,
that's a good principle. But unfortunately, I'm not suggesting this of sort of my current competition, but through their interaction
jeepers.
bonding.
People will think we're blanking you out there. We didn't get any of that. Your lips are moving, but we can't hear it. But I haven't edited anything.
Okay, it's the wind. I'm sorry about that. The big gust came through there. So what I'm saying is, I talked to you in Lanzarote. If we sign sales and things, if we take away, you said to take it on it's all about trust. And if people are
Yeah,
sort of their sense of ego is changing because of the responses they receive through social media and online, it just changes their approach to the event. And I think you can always say this is like selling your soul to Facebook or Instagram, whatever, because it's such an affirmation of what you're doing that it can affect the ego, and then therefore you might sort of sail and compete in a way that is not true to your genuine convictions and beliefs
yeah,
at the
yeah,
beginning
yeah,
of a
yeah.
race.
I
You
know
know
what
what
you
I'm
mean.
saying. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying. And I
Anyway,
think the
the,
more you do to make sure to take away any of that ambiguity is good as a race organizer.
yeah. Well, we mainly got it by declaration, but anyway, we'll wait and see because there's another entrant update coming out tonight about signing off on the port departure form from here because it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah,
Because there's sales coming on board, and if they're not being used, they've got to be sealed and signed and all that sort of stuff. So, a few things going
yeah,
on there. Okay, well that's all good. So, thank you for all of that. Look forward to see you in Cape Town when you arrive, and good luck, eh?
Thank you, Don. I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you and Jane as well when you arrive there.
Yeah.
Strange. Looks like the sheep's walked that one. I know.
got a jet. No, he's now on the end of the bowsprit, so the tack is down. The clue's ready to sheet. Here we go. Boom! There it is. He's off. Woo! He's away. Now watch this. Boom, boom. Okay. That's nice. That's very nice. Yeah, that's a beauty. Finally. Jeepers. Okay, now it's on. And he'll carry that all through the night, I reckon. So, yeah, that looks good. Very specky. Very specky. I'll do a donut in a minute. Just hold this. He's chomping along. Yep. He's chomping. Wouldn't want any more breeze on that. Now all of a sudden it's blowing about 12 knots. Probably going to puff a bit more, but look at the white caps up there. Yeah. How far can you go? This is our biggest kite. So, all pretty cool. Whoop, here we go. Ooh. Well, this is a bit of fun. Up there. I'll try for a donut while it's calm. Ooh, he's getting a bit over pressure here. That main's got a everyone will have ideas on what's supposed to happen here, but the main's go a little bit more. Get rid of the head sail. Yep, he's got a downfall on that, so you can, sorry, go. Jerk. Okay, I'm going to do a donut while he's fluffing around with the head sail. So get ready for the donut. Jeepers, he's flying. Didn't quite get it.